Okay, good evening, Erev Tov. We're in Parashat Tetzaveh, and unlike the usual Shiur, we're continuing the former Shiur of last week's parasha, and this week will be relevant to this parasha as well. Okay, so let's go back to what we saw last week. We'll go just now to Sefer Melachim, and we'll go very fast over the questions that we had last week. We saw that Sefer Melachim and Sefer Divrei Yamim both discuss the Mikdash of Shlomo, the Temple of Shlomo, and we saw that the dimensions of Temple of Shlomo are very different. We can talk a month about the differences, but would like to look about several differences which are very, very weird. We saw, first of all, that Shlomo put the two kruvim on very big on the floor, unlike the Mishkan, that the kruvim set on top of Aron HaBrit. We knew that Shlomo, and I didn't check the sources, he changed and made 10 menorot, 10 mizrakot, 10 kiorim, 10 sinks, but he lichora made just one shulchan, and we asked why did he make one shulchan, and then we saw at the end of the shiur that on Sefer Divrei Yamim it's written that he made 10 shulchanot. So now the question is not why did he make one shulchan? Why did Sefer Melachim describe the Bet HaMikdash as if Shlomo built just one table, unlike the other things that he made 10, all of them, 10 menorot, etc. While in Sefer Divrei Yamim, we have a repetition, and we might expect to find the same thing, and we find there that Shlomo HaMelech made 10 tables. Okay, so we have the klal. Yesterday I started with Parshanut Mikra. So we said that Divrei Torah aniyim b'makom echad and ashirim b'makom acher, meaning to say that sometimes you might say that Divrei Torah you don't read from one source, you have to read from many sources. Let's say that if you read the Chet HaMeraglim, you don't read just Parashat Shlach, you read Parashat Shlach and then you read Parashat Devarim, and Moshe describes it in one way in Parashat Shlach and the other way in Parashat Devarim. You synthesize it, or I don't know, or you solve the contradictions, but then you have the big picture of both of the parashot. So you might say that the same thing happens here. In Sefer Melachim, we have one description. In Sefer Divrei Yamim, we have another one. And you must solve it by saying that it doesn't contradict or saying that it's two attitudes, whatever. So try to make this with the contradictions that we have. Okay, so let's go back to all the problems that we encountered. We saw that there is a Mizbeach in Perek Vav, which is here, and we found somehow ולפני הדביר 20 אמה, okay, that the Mikra describes Kodesh HaKodashim, and we see that Vaitzaf Mizbeach Erez. What does it mean? How is it possible? The Mizbeach was outside the Mikdash, outside the Mishkan. So we wanted to say that it's not Mizbeach HaOlah, it's Mizbeach HaKtoret, a small Mizbeach made of gold that was inside the building. Okay, but then we have a problem why it's called Lifnei Hadvir. We know that the Mizbeach HaOlah was in the east of the building. Okay, we had on the west, where the western part was Kodesh HaKodashim, the eastern part was Kodesh or Eichal or מה שתקראו לו את זה, and it consisted of Shulchan, Menorah, and Mizbach HaKtoret. So Mizbach HaKtoret was כאילו on the east, across, in front of the Aron, okay? in front of the Aron. But why is it related to Kodesh HaKodeshim? If you just read this pasuk, it might sound as if the Dvir, the Kodesh HaKodeshim, consisted not only Aron, but also a Mizbeach, okay? And we asked that not only the problem is with the Mizbeach related to Kodesh HaKodeshim, but why do we have to write about the Mizbeach here? Because on Perek Zayin, which discusses not just the frame, but the kelim, okay? The first opening psukim of Sefer of Perek Zayin discuss Beit Shlomo, his own house, but later we see that he built this, built that, built columns, built kelim, and here we have special psukim discussing the Mizbeach, okay? Vayasta Kiorim, Vayasta Kiorot, etc. And then we see at the menorot, and we see the sipot, okay, and we see the Mizbeach. So if we see here the Mizbeach, the question is now doubled, because it's a problem of meaning that somehow the Mizbach HaKtoret is related to Kodesh HaKodeshim, and it's a problem of a repetition or a location, because the Mizbach HaKtoret, even if it's somehow related to Kodesh HaKodeshim, gods know why, so it has to be mentioned in Perek Zayin, not in Perek Vav, because we're not talking about the frame, we talk about the details, the kelim inside of it. Okay, so that's one problem. We saw that there is no Mizbach Ha'olah at all, okay? That we don't find that Shlomo HaMelech built a Mizbach Ha'olah, the big Mizbeach for the Korbanot, and we might say that he wasn't Makriv Korbanot, he was Tzimchoni or something like this, but then we saw that it's a foolish ta'ana, because we saw that Shlomo HaMelech was a big Makriv, he was Makriv thousands, hundred thousands of sheep, and 10,000s of cow. So he was a big makriv. Not only that he was a big makriv, he didn't have enough place, and therefore he had to be mekadesh, to be sanctify the floor of Beit HaMikdash, because he didn't have a place. It wasn't enough for him. So you might say that he tried to start with the former Mizbach that Moshe had, and then it was too small, and then he had to sanctify the floor, and therefore at the beginning it doesn't mention that he built some Mizbach Olah, but later on, when he noticed after Am Yisrael came and he saw that there was no place, so then he built the big Mizbeach. And therefore, it's not mentioned at the beginning, it's just mentioned at Perek Chet. I'll just show you again. Perek Chet, Pasuk Samech Bet. Just at the end, after everything, after all the tefillah, after all the foundation of Beit HaMikdash HaRishon, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Vayikechalot Shlomo להתפלל Hashem. He finished davening, he finished bowing in front of Hashem, and then he was blessed, and then והמלך וכל ישראל זובחים זבח לפני השם. ויזבח שלמה את זבח השלמים אשר זבח להשם, בקר 22,000 וצאן 120,000, ויחנכו, okay? They made חנוכת הבית of בית השם, המלך וכל בית ישראל, ביום ההוא קידש המלך את תוך החצר אשר לפני בית השם, כי עשה שם את העולה, את המנחה ואת החלבי השלמים, כי מזבח הנחושת אשר לפני השם, so we didn't know about it. Now we know that there was a Mizbach HaNechoshet, probably as Larry suggested last week, because he inherited it from Moshe. So he had Mizbach HaNechoshet, and that's why it's not mentioned, because he had it before, but it was too small from Me'achil et ha'olah v'et ha'mincha v'et chelvei hashlamim. So now we have another problem. We don't see Mizbach ha'olah. We don't see Mizbach HaKtoret mentioned in its place in Perek Zayin. We do see it, mention it twice in Perek Vav and Perek Zayin, and in Perek Vav it's not related to its real place, but somehow to Kodesh HaKodeshim. We don't understand why. We see one Shulchan, and okay, that's enough for now. And now we'll just sum up the questions. Now I did it, but I want to say another thing. In Sefer Melachim, we see somehow that the Sefer gives Mizbach HaKtoret a priority. Okay? And we don't find Mizbach HaOlah. Again, we don't find Mizbach HaOlah at the beginning. We just find it, as we see now, at the end of Perek Chet. Okay? We don't find Mizbach HaOlah. And we do find Mizbach HaKtoret. Not only that we find twice Mizbach HaKtoret in Perek Vav and Perek Zayin, but we find Mizbach HaKtoret as Keilu extension of Kodesh HaKodeshim somehow. On Divrei Yamim, on the contrary, we see exactly the difference, the opposite. We don't find Mizbach HaKtoret. We do find a lot talking about Mizbach HaOlah. Now let's see it in Divrei Yamim for a second. Okay, let's see it. Just a minute. Okay, we're in Perek Gimel. Shlomo started building. Okay, the Beit HaMikdash. Okay, and he Vayas Mizbeach Nechoshet. Okay, look how we start the building by saying that he built Mizbach HaNechoshet. You remember that we didn't find it in Sefer Melachim, and therefore that's what I say, that Sefer Divrei Yamim talks about the Mizbach HaNechoshet mainly, okay? And we don't find Mizbach HaKtoret here not related to Kodesh HaKodeshim, nothing about it. Okay, let's go another perek further. We have here ותשלם כל המלאכה וכולי וכולי וכולי. We don't find it. So again, we have in Sefer Melachim, we have a lot of stressing out of Mizbach HaKtoret, Mizbach HaZahav, the golden tabernacle, whereas in Sefer Divrei Yamim, I do see the opposite. The real thing, as you might expect, as you know from the kindergarten, as you know from the Mishkan, that the main thing is Mizbach HaOlah. And yes, there is a Mizbach HaKtoret for the Ktoret. The Ktoret is not such a main thing. I remind you of the famous Machloket Ramban and Rambam, that all the people talk about it throughout Parashiot HaMishkan. According to Ramban, the main goal of Mishkan, Beit HaMikdash, is to be the place of Aron HaBrit. As we spoke on Shabbat, according to Ramban, in many places, in Parashat Truma, in Akdama to Sefer Shmot, Akdama to Sefer Vayikra, so he sees all the Mishkan as a continuation of Ma'amad Har Sinai. He sees Har Sinai as a constant place of giving Torah, and in order to give the Torah throughout all the generation of the desert, therefore, we have many Matan Torah. In each place that Am Yisrael Choneh, there is a Mishkan, there is a Aron, and its place as a whole Mishkan is based on the Aron. But people tend to say that according to the Rambam, either in Sefer HaMitzvahs or in the beginning of Ilchot Beit HaBchira, the Rambam speaks about Beit HaMikdash as a place of korbanot. Okay? Na'aleh v'nakriv korbanot. So the Rambam doesn't see the main goal of Beit HaMikdash just as a makom of Torah, but the Rambam sees maybe as a place of korbanot, okay? So now, just to sum up, Sefer Divrei Yamim is normal because he sees it like the Rambam. He sees the main place of Beit HaMikdash as a part of Korbanot. Sefer Melachim is very weird because he takes away the part of the Korbanot and he brings instead not only the Torah, he brings instead the Ktoret. Okay, Mizbach Ktoret, Mizbach HaZahav. So we have to understand what's going on. Another problem that I would like to show you is something very weird here. Sefer Divrei Hayamim. As I said, Shlomo starts with building Beit Hashem, okay? And then he builds and builds and builds, and builds Kruvim, okay? And in Pasuk Yudaled, ויעש את הפרוכת, תכלת וארגמן וחרמיל ובוץ. Which parochet is it? It's a parochet between Kodesh and Kodesh HaKodeshim. Okay? Okay. On Sefer Melachim, it doesn't appear. Again, something very weird.
Wait.
It doesn't appear. There is no parochet in Sefer Melachim between the Kodesh and Kodesh HaKodeshim. There is a description of the Kodesh, there is a description of the Kodesh HaKodeshim, no parochet between. And you remember all the Gemara, the famous Gemara in Yoma, the Gemara says that when Am Yisrael went to Beit HaMikdash on the Regolim, so they used to move to open the parochet and show them the Kruvim. You remember this Gemara? That they looked from the outside of Beit HaMikdash, they could see throughout the parochet which was moved away, and then they could see Kodesh HaKodeshim, and they could see the Kruvim looking at each other and showing the love between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Am Yisrael. That's what the Gemara says, that Am Yisrael, when they went to the Regolim, they went to Beit HaMikdash, and then the Kohanim would move away the parochet, and then they would be able to see the Kruvim. And then the Gemara asks, wait a minute, what are you talking? You are telling me stories from Beit Rishon or from Beit Sheni? If you see that there were Kruvim, so according to the Gemara, it must be Beit Rishon, because Gemara says that on Beit Sheni there was no Oron. You know that according to in the same Gemara there is a machlokes why there wasn't an Oron on Beit Sheni, whether Yoshiyahu HaMelech hid it because he knew that it would be exiled and the Babylonians would take it away, so he hid it, and that's what the Rambam posek like. And according to the Rambam, there is a tunnel under Har HaBayit, and the Aron is hidden there. We must send somebody from the Hamas to dig for us, and maybe he'll find it. You know, there are a lot of stories and legends about people who try to start looking for it, and they died, and the Arabs caught them. A lot of stories. I don't know what's true, but doesn't matter. According to the Rambam, according to the Gemara, Yoshiyahu HaMelech knew. He lived very few years before the Churban, and he knew that there would be a Churban. The whole story that he found the Megillat Sefer, it was written on it that you'll go, you and your king, to the diaspora, and he knew that, and therefore he hid the Aron HaBrit. According to another Shita, which was not Nifsak LaHalochet.
Frozen.
Pardon?
Frozen.
Frozen?
Wait.
Did you hear me?
Don't fall asleep.
Hello? Hi, did you hear me?
Rav Cahn.
Hello?
You're back.
Hi.
Okay, you're back.
Now you're hearing me?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I don't know. I see the unstable connection just after a while after you say that there is a problem. Okay, so repeat again. I understand that you did hear most of it. there is a machloket on the Gemara, who hid Aron HaBrit on Beit Rishon. According to the Rambam, according to the Gemara, one shita in the Gemara, it was Yoshiyahu. He knew that we were going to be exiled to Bavel, and therefore he hid Aron HaBrit in a tunnel under the Mount of Mount Scopus, okay? No, Mount Scopus, הר הבית, כן? Mount Scopus זה הר הצופים, נכון? אז הר הבית. And according to another shita in the Gemara, Nebuchadnezzar took away all the Aaron with all the kelim as a part of the shalal that he took when he took us all to Bavel. Okay, so the Gemara, I go back to the Gemara. The Gemara asks, wait a second, if you talk about Beit that they could see, the Olei Regolim could see the Kruvim, so it must be Beit Rishon, because on Beit Sheni there was no Aron, and therefore there were no Kruvim. Even if it was detached, okay, according to Mikdash Shlomo, it's famous there were no Kruvim on Beit Sheni as well. It's a Gemara, explicit Gemara in Yom. So the Gemara says, okay, so it must be, if you tell me that the Olei Regalim could see the Kruvim, it must be that it was Beit Rishon. But on Beit Rishon, how could you say that the Kohanim took away the parochet? There was no parochet on Beit Rishon. That's what the question of the Gemara. Gemara discussed it. It doesn't matter what the Gemara answers. But wait a minute. How can the Gemara say such a thing? I just read you from Sefer Divrei Hayomim, okay? That Shlomo HaMelech vayas et haparochet. What's going on here? How can the Gemara says that if you talk, it's a stira from both sides. From the one hand, it couldn't be Beit Sheni because there was no Kruvim and no Aron. So it must be Beit Rishon. But on the other hand, it couldn't be Beit Rishon because on Beit Rishon there was no parochet to move away. No, of course there was a parochet. Explicit pasuk in Divrei Hayomim. But what is the real answer? But the Gemara didn't relate to Divrei Hayomim. The Gemara related to Sefer Melachim. In Sefer Melachim, there was no parochet. Okay? If you learn the whole Tanakh like Mizrochnik, so you know the whole Torah, and then you have the contradiction between Sefer Divrei Hayomim and Sefer Melachim. But if you just learn Sefer Melachim, okay, like in school, you don't know more than Shoftim, Shmuel, and Melachim. Okay, so in Sefer Melachim there is no parochet, and therefore the Gemara asks, if you talk about Beit Rishon, there is no parochet. So
what is? It says Vayal Alav Kruvim. It's not a curtain; it's a cover.
Therefore, Sefer Melachim.
Here, right here in this text.
Yeah, here I write from Divrei Hayomim. There is a parochet.
The parochet, but it's a cover. It's not a separation.
Okay. So, okay, where it's another problem with the word alav, okay, because it sounds as if it's on it. Okay, but it means that it went over it and he put it on the Kodesh HaKodeshim. Take it for granted, but you're right that it's another problem. There are 100 problems here. But it's not a big one, Ken. It's just a perush that it was inside, okay? But if you take for granted that there was a parochet, okay, and he put it as a mechitza between the Kodesh HaKodeshim and the Kodesh, so everything is fine. But what's not fine that it's not mentioned in Sefer Melachim. So now we have a lot of problems, and I just want to end with the last one. You remember that we read this pasuk in Sefer Melachim, ביום ההוא קידש השם את תוך החצר אשר לפני בית השם. נכון? מה אמרנו? ששלמה didn't have enough place, and therefore he sanctified the floor of
the Mizbeach.
Of the Mizbeach, נכון?
As a
Which Mizbeach? העולה, אוקיי? ברור, נכון? כי מזבח הנחושת אשר לפני השם, קטון מאכיל את העולה ואת המנחה ואת חלבי השלמים. Now, we missed a very, very big problem. Pay attention twice. את תוך החצר אשר לפני בית השם I can understand. But כי מזבח הנחושת אשר לפני השם? What does it mean לפני השם? If you look all over the Torah, לפני השם meaning to say inside the building. הכהן נכנס לפני ולפנים, and if you look in אחרי מות, so everything in לפני השם, ולקח את he takes the קטורת and puts it לפני השם, wherever it's written לפני השם, it means inside, in מזבח הנחוש, in מזבח העולה, or in the menorah, or in the שולחן, השולחן אשר לפני השם. מזבח הנחושת, the whole goal of מזבח הנחושת is to be outside. You never say מזבח הנחושת אשר לפני השם, אוקיי? it's ממש סתירה, אוקיי? העולה היא תמיד פתח אוהל מועד, never לפני השם, להפך, זה in the courtyard, outside לפני השם, פתח אוהל מועד. And here, the pasuk describes in ספר מלכים, מזבח הנחושת אשר לפני השם. Very, very weird. כן.
Wait, again. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
You hear me? Hello?
10 seconds.
Now you're back.
You lost 10 seconds.
You lost 10 seconds. Thanks a lot. So again, I just spoke about מזבח הנחושת אשר לפני השם. Okay? And I said, my question is that מזבח הנחושת, you never and cannot describe it as לפני השם. It's saying like Goliath, it's like describing Goliath the midget. Okay? זה פשוט לא, it's ממש הפוך. Like describing קודש הקודשים as חצר אוהל מועד. לא, זה לא. מזבח הנחושת הוא לא לפני השם, מזבח הנחושת is outside, okay? הוא אשר פתח אוהל מועד. What's going on? So now we have 10 minutes, and we have to start answering, because then, unless I do it, I'll be stuck like last week. Okay. We'll try to make a line to all the questions that we said. Do you listen? Do you hear me? Now, yes. Okay. As we saw, Sefer Melachim makes less about Mizbach HaNechoshet. It doesn't describe Shlomo as builds the Mizbach HaNechoshet, and he describes Mizbach HaKtoret, and Sefer Divrei Hayamim is more normal that he did the opposite. And what we would like to say now, that is Sefer Melachim, we start from the Kedusha comes from the inside of Bet HaMikdash and separates outside. Therefore, Mizbach, Kedusha starts from the Aron, or from Kodesh HaKodeshim, and a lot of things are annexed, are mesupachim, are a part of this Kedusha. Therefore, and I'll explain it in a minute, therefore, when talking about Kodesh HaKodeshim, you can say that Mizbach HaOlah is a part, Keilu, of Kodesh HaKodeshim. Therefore, you don't have any parochet, because there is no separation in Sefer Melachim between Kodesh HaKodeshim and the Kodesh. Therefore, you even might say that Mizbach HaNechoshet and the courtyard in the east is Lifnei Hashem. Because in Sefer Melachim, you start from the Shechina inside, and the Kedusha goes and takes more and more. It's like the famous Midrash talking about Adam HaRishon, that was, or all the olam that was created from Mekom HaMizbeach. What does it mean? The Kadosh Baruch Hu started from Mekom HaMizbeach and then created Har HaBayit and then created Yerushalayim and then created Eretz Yisrael and then created the whole world. Okay? The same thing happens here. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the Kedusha in Kodesh HaKodashim, and it goes and annexing the Mizbach HaKtoret, and then it's annexing Mizbach HaZahav, HaNechoshet, and you don't have any distinction, you don't have any parochet to stop the Kedusha militpashet, miligdol. Therefore, now we can understand why we have why Mizbach HaKtoret shayach לקודש הקודשים, why מזבח הנחושת שייך לפני השם, why we don't have any parochet, okay? And why we see we don't have מזבח העולה at all in ספר מלכים, because what does מזבח העולה mean? מזבח העולה mean our work. We bring HaKadosh Baruch Hu korbanot, we bring him cattle, we bring him sheep, we bring him our presence, and we expect him to answer, to be given it, to take it and thank us, okay? So it's our avodah. And since Sefer Melachim describes HaKadosh Baruch Hu's way of the Kedusha, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's way of Ashrat Shechina, therefore we don't have Ke'ilu Mizbach Bichlal. Shlomo doesn't build any Mizbach Nechoshet. Later on, he'll need it for sure, for bringing 1,000, 100,000 of korbanot. Okay, so you sanctify even the floor, but he won't build Mizbach Nechoshet. And Mizbach HaKtoret will be considered as a part of Kodesh HaKodeshim. And there is no distinction between Kodesh HaKodeshim and the Kodesh. But in Sefer Divrei Hayamim, we see the opposite. Sefer Divrei Hayamim gives us the Shita of Beit HaMikdash, not as a place of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that he dwells and brings his nochechut, his presence, and therefore there is a big Kedusha. No. It's a place that we come to meet HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We bring him our purity, we bring him korbanot, and therefore he gets a korbanot and he's satisfied. We don't know why, okay? It's another issue, but he's satisfied with our sacrifices. So therefore, in Sefer Divrei Hayamim, we do find the normal way of making לעשות issue from HaMizbeach, starting the building with HaMizbeach. We have הפרדה, we have a separation, Kodesh and Kodesh HaKodeshim. Nobody would dare saying that the Mizbeach is somehow related to Kodesh HaKodeshim. No, Kodesh HaKodeshim is a place that you meet HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You don't dare of thinking that your own part, own place on which you are makriv with a korbanot, it belongs to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. No, it's a place that you meet HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You bring him things that you plead and ask and pray for, and he answers you. Therefore, on Sefer Divrei Hayamim, we have a mechitza, we have the parochet, we have the big Mizbeach HaNechoshet, and Mizbach HaKtoret comes to a very small kli, one of many. Among the Shulchan and Menorah, there is a Mizbach HaKtoret in the Eichal, in the Kodesh, but okay, you'd never expect it to be a part of the Kodesh HaKodeshim. And now we go back to the Nekuda that you said last week, because who wrote both of the books? Sefer Melachim is written according to the famous Gemara, Baba Batra, Yudalet Tetzaveh. The Gemara says there who wrote all the books, and the Gemara says that the one that wrote Sefer Melachim is Yirmiyahu. When did Yirmiyahu live? Beit Rishon. Who wrote Sefer Divrei Hayamim? Ezra HaSofer. When did Ezra HaSofer live? Beit Sheni. Okay? The difference between Ezra and Yirmiyahu was not big at all. Okay? It was maybe 40 years, 30 years, I don't know. Okay? But they looked differently on things. Yirmiyahu looks on Beit HaMikdash like somebody from Beit Rishon. Ezra comes with a toda'ah, with a knowing that Beit HaMikdash HaRishon doesn't exist. It was erected. From now on, there will be just Beit Sheni. And therefore, Divrei Hayamim, which is a book of Ezra, comes and describes Beit Sheni way of writing. Okay, he describes Beit Rishon. Okay, because we have no description of the midot of Beit Sheni just in the Mishnah in Masechet Midot, not in the Psukim. But Ke'ilu, there is a machloket or two attitudes between Yirmiyahu, Beit Rishon, and Ezra, Beit Sheni, how to describe the Mikdash of Shlomo and how to describe the meaning of Beit HaMikdash at all. You can take it back to Parashat Truma, how to describe the Mishkan. Is it a place that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to dwell in the Tachtonim? The Asuli Mikdash, V'shachanti betocham, okay? I want to live, as Midrash says, a famous Midrash, that why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu create the world? Because he is a king and he wants a nation, and therefore he has to live in a place. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants to live either in Olam Hazeh or, in short, in Beit HaMikdash. And therefore, it's whole a matter of Kedusha, how to put HaKadosh Baruch Hu to narrow it, to put him in a small house. And therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu swells and becomes swollen and swollen and swollen, okay? HaKadosh Baruch Hu mitnapeach. HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes from Kodesh HaKodashim and he annexes without mechitzot, without parochet. And therefore he takes the Mizbeach, and therefore he takes even the Mizbeach of the Chatzer, of the courtyard. And he doesn't want Yirmiyah to describe in his book of Sefer Melachim, he doesn't want to describe the Mizbach HaNechoshet because he doesn't think that our share means anything. He wants to describe how HaKadosh Baruch Hu does. But Ezra Sofer, on the other hand, from the different aspect of him, he comes to describe the same Mikdash of Shlomo from Am Yisrael's perspective. And therefore, he talks at length about Parochet. He talks about Mizbeach Ha'olah, okay? He talks about not one shulchan, he talks about 10 shulchanot. I'll talk about it maybe next time in 2 minutes, why the difference between one shulchan and 10 shulchanot. And therefore, we've met most of the differences solved, because we see that there are two ways how to describe the same Beit HaMikdash of Shlomo. And coming back, leaving Beit HaMikdash of Shlomo, and coming back to Parshiyot HaMishkan that we know from the Truma, Tetzaveh, we have the same problem with Mizbach HaKtoret, because in our parasha in Tetzaveh, we find Mizbach HaKtoret not in its place. Mizbach HaKtoret is what should have been in Parashat Truma, in the Keli, because Parashat Tetzaveh deal at length with the Bgodim, the clothes of the Kohanim. Why is Mizbach HaKtoret mentioned just in Parashat Tetzaveh? At the end, it should be Ve'asu Mizbach Mizbach HaKtoret. Did we forget Mizbach HaKtoret? So it must, according to what we say, Mizbach Ktoret somehow is related to the ending of Beit HaMikdash, and therefore even in Sefer Melachim, since the ending, the מטרה, the goal, the חנוכת הבית of בית המקדש, consist of השראת שכינה, or consist of קודש הקודשים, so therefore, somehow, מזבח הקטורת is annexed to קודש הקודשים in ספר מלכים. In ספר דברי הימים that we have the separation, so no, מזבח הקטורת is a part of the כלים, and we have, the main goal is to be מקריבים לקורבנות in מזבח העולה, מזבח הנחושת outside, and there is no בלבול. But in ספר מלכים, since it talks about the הקדוש ברוך hu's way, we have מזבח הקטורת as some הרחבה, some extension of קודש הקודשים. So we finished with 90% of it. You have now the 2 lines, and maybe next week we'll talk ממש בקצרה about מזבח הקטורת, and we'll add something about it. But as to now, I think we've solved most of the problems.
Mhm.
Okay?
Very good.
Yeah. Thanks. That's for now. You heard me, right? Just few
we heard.
minutes that you mentioned. Most of it you do. Okay.
Yeah, we heard it all. Thank you.
Uh,
Good night. בשורות טובות.
Bye.
So I won't say anything. Okay.
לילה טוב.
Okay.